I think about tech debt as a reality of the business. And I think the question we need to ask ourselves, like, how do you optimize it? Like, how do you proactively optimize it? So what I tell my team as a rule of thumb is think about spending 30% of your spend capacity against proactive technical maintenance, proactive technical excellence, proactive bug and support-related activities. And when you do that, you don't find yourself in a spot where you're looking at like a 6-month and year-long project, where you stop slowing down the business.
Welcome to the E-Commerce Toolbox Expert Perspectives, a podcast by Noibu, where we explore the elite strategies and cutting-edge insights with our expert guests. Get ready to propel your e-commerce business to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Toolbox Expert's Perspective. Joining us today, we have Rohit Nathany. Rohit will introduce himself in a second, but Rohit is the Chief Product and Chief Technical Officer for Mejuri, a leading online retailer for luxury jewelry. So welcome, Rohit. Really excited to have you on the show.
Thanks, Kelly. Nice to be here.
Awesome. I always like to start off by learning a bit about your career journey. Obviously, I was doing research ahead of time. I saw that you worked a little bit at HelloFresh and a couple of different other brands. So why don't you tell us in your own words your career journey and how you ended up in a top executive role at Mejuri?
Absolutely. I've experimented a lot with my career over the last 20 years, and the first 15 years were very non-linear, to say the least. I started way back as a software engineer, very quickly moved into starting and running my own manufacturing company. It scaled really fast, and within 2 years, we were doing close to, I believe, $5 million sales, 10 products, 50 plus suppliers, a great learning experience. But when it didn't work out well, I moved to the US, did my MBA, and joined Amazon right after, where I ended up spending actually 4+ years at Amazon, where I got lucky and ended up in a couple of high visibility projects and did a bunch of things, man, right? Like, from managing a category P&L in Amazon Fresh to actually building new business unit from scratch, which is multi-million-dollar function at Amazon now. So 4 years later, found myself in a comfort zone, ended up in a startup world, and then aligned myself with product and engineering functions ever since. I joined Mejuri about 3 years ago now, and now I manage 3 different functions: marketing, product, and engineering. And what I think as an exec, where I can add a lot of value is I'm able to distill all these different experiences from operations to finance, supply chain, engineering, and product to this role, right? Like, where I just feel comfortable walking in and out of any discussion, whether it's a fulfillment network or operations technology or finance, and be able to add value is extremely fulfilling. So it just goes beyond, right, like the 3 or 2 different areas that I directly manage. Is being able to contribute to different functions, is being able to connect the dots and see how it can actually add value to the business. It's great.
No, it's great. And you and I have chatted prior to this, and you talked to me a bit about how Mejuri's kind of been on this digital transformation, and maybe talk to us a bit about your kind of impact and how you've shaped over the last few years. There's a big migration you guys did that we'll chat about a bit later, but yeah, maybe talk us through your kind of journey at Mejuri so far and kind of what you came into and some of the earliest things you identified and how you've been able to start working on those things.
So I joined back in early 2022. And when I joined, from the engineering and tech perspective, we were on this fully custom stack. We had just taken a decision to a new POS solution, but that was the extent of the non-custom element of our stack. Very quickly, a few months into the role, the biggest pain point for me was what I call the invisible one, which is the opportunity cost of not innovating fast enough. Now, you can find yourself in this situation with any stack, whether it's custom or a fully unified external solution, but that was the problem for us. Now, I saw it manifest in many different ways, whether how we were spending disproportionate amount of time maintaining the stack, troubleshooting bugs, talking about feasibility of an idea, instead of actually innovating, instead of actually testing and running multiple tests, right? Like every sprint. And I can still recall countless instances where we had to kill an idea just because it wasn't possible to deliver in a certain time frame with the stack. So when I think about the speed of innovation, that's what I'm referring to. And philosophically, as a brand, I'm like, we're not in the business of building a tech product. We're in the business of growing the business and innovating on behalf of the customers. And those are the things we were not really able to do. So we took a step back and we started looking at all the problems we wanted to solve. Now, when we started this journey, I wanted to avoid a big replatforming project. You don't want to get your team stuck in like a year-long term project because again, the opportunity cost of not doing something else. But once we started like looking under the hood, it was very clear, like even a refactor would require a long-term commitment here. So once we knew that, hey, we need to invest time to create a new baseline for us, it just came down to finding the best way to do so. And that's when like we had a very clearly laid out set of problem statements where we wanted to be. We engaged multiple solution and vendors, and through a series of technical workshops, we've thrown Shopify to be our best partner.
I think one thing that I'm pulling out of this, which it makes sense, and by the way, I love that you subtly mentioned early on in this podcast that you own revenue and technology. And I think that's really, really interesting and awesome because I've seen too many times either there's a business person that doesn't fully understand technology, so they don't understand the value of flexibility and iterating and testing to drive up results. So that's one side of the extreme. The other side of the extreme is you have someone who's so in love with the technology that they forget potentially that they're working at a business that has to drive revenue, and it's not technology for technology's sake. So I think you're in such a really unique position. Owning both KPIs really makes it so that you have to find something that works, and not just works from a technology standpoint, but actually drives revenue and conversion for the business. So I love candidly that you're on the hook for both. But with that said, you kind of called out that when you first came into the role, there was things you guys wanted to do to drive business results that the technology wasn't flexible enough to enable you to do, correct?
100%, yeah.
So now that you guys have kind of moved to, well, I mean, we could just talk about this now. You guys have just recently launched, it is a pretty public launch on hydrogen and oxygen framework. You moved your POSs over to Shopify, and basically now you have a very customized front end and you've built it on the Shopify infrastructure. I mean, you've talked a bit about why you made that decision, but maybe talk to us about the impacts of that decision and hopefully in the future being able to iterate much quicker. So yeah, maybe talk to us about how you're looking at that moving forward.
I'll share a few examples because we recently migrated, still very early to share the full impact of this migration. But I'll kind of share a few. So with the migration, let's look at payments. In the previous estate, we were maintaining all this custom integration. So anytime we wanted to do any changes or innovation over here, we knew it's going to take a ton of time to unlock any new capability, unlock a new payment system. And you can imagine, right, like those decisions are not easy, especially when you're working with limited resources. But with Shopify, we already were able to take advantage of the accelerated shop pay, which is out of the box. And we just signed a contract with another buy now, pay later solution. And I'm already seeing, I think around 2% revenue flowing through that new payment provider. So it again shows the power of the out-of-the-box innovation and future capabilities that you get out of this new platform. The other examples, like you mentioned, the revenue side, I'm constantly thinking about how to improve our marketing attribution, how to improve the marketing dollar efficiency. And one of the big area of opportunity for us is how did you hear about a survey? So it being a static custom solution in the past, like really restricted our ability to do quick iterations to make it a very robust feature. But with Shopify, we actually just signed a contract with an external solution that will allow us to have a much more robust set of capabilities around how did you hear about our survey, which once I layer in with other attribution solutions should help me get my marketing dollar efficiency. These are just two examples that highlights the power of actually bringing in flexibility in your technical solution that allows us to move faster as a business. Actually, I'll give one more example, which is a lot more powerful. International expansion. Like with Shopify, we are partnered with globally as well to unlock localization in multiple geos now, which is already showing up as material double-digit growth in the international rest of world business for us.
I love hearing that. And my next question is going to be around prioritizing features. And I know you're obviously early on in the replatforming journey, so some of this might not be fully kind of concreted out yet, but how do you look at which new technologies and product features to kind of develop upon? And how are you making those trade-offs between adding new features and making sure that you don't end up in a scenario where you have a lot of tech debt and stability becomes an issue again, because it's always a balance. Customization drives performance, but if you customize too much and it's done in an unstructured way, or if you don't have the infrastructure to kind of stabilize quickly, you could destabilize the platform. So yeah, how are you looking at balancing that out of curiosity?
I think you made a good point that like, hey, once you have built a new baseline, how do you make sure you don't find yourself back in the same spot where you were with like a lot of technical debt slowing you down? I think the way I think about this, and technical debt can be a bad term with really a lot of negative emotions around it, but I look tech debt in a positive way. I think about tech debt as a reality of the business. And I think the question we need to ask ourselves, like, how do you optimize it? Like, how do you practically optimize it? So what I told my team as a rule of thumb is think about spending 30% of your sprint capacity against proactive technical maintenance, proactive technical excellence, proactive bug and support related activities. And when you do that, you don't find yourself in a spot where you're looking at like a 6-month and year long project where you stop slowing down the business. One way or the other, you are going to spend that much amount of time technical solution on the platform, on the maintenance and support. So if you start making it a part of your sprint planning process, you stay ahead of the game. Now, 30% is a rule of thumb. It can be 10% for a given quarter, and it can be 50% for a given quarter, depending on where you are. So if I were to start like Q1, I'll probably end up spending more time getting the platform ready, but for the Q3 and Q4 period. But in Q4, I just want to churn out like features after features to be holiday and BFCM ready. So that's how I would think about proactively managing our capacity versus simply skewing the weight towards one side.
That's a really good piece of insight. Pivoting a little bit on something that's usually a bit more custom, like a mobile app, could you maybe talk to us a bit about the launch of the mobile app for Mejuri? What were some of the technology decisions that went into that? And for maybe those that are on the fence about investing in a mobile app, is it worth it? What are kind of some of the benefits that you've seen? Curious what your thoughts are there.
I would say that we approached mobile app as just another business decision and investment. We looked at the opportunity, we business case state, we are big on writing culture. So we write memos for everything. So when it came to mobile app, we had strong conviction around what value it can drive for us, but we had to put our thoughts down on paper. We had to business case it. And once we started looking at the data from primary research, from secondary research, that the opportunity was right in front of us. So that point, it just became an exercise of investment and then execution. So the highlights for us were, one, the community. And that was one of the actually really fascinating piece for me after joining Mejuri was how much our customers love Mejuri, our brand, and how strong that community was. So once I started learning more about the customer insights, once I started seeing the data around like repurchase rate and the customer lifetime value, it was very clear that I needed a solution that actually can help us get closer to our loyal customers, can help me prioritize values and features that they care about more. And then in parallel, we are launching so many different stores and getting even close to our customers. We are launching new services and experiences. We launched our membership and loyalty program. So outside of the business case at just another shopping channel, like app, for us, it became a delivery mechanism for those values to our loyal customers, for offering personalization of product recommendation, for offering a platform where you can manage your piercing appointment or a service appointment in the store. So when we started layering in the loyalty, the membership component, the answer was really obvious for us. And of course, all the research data around mobile app showed like give us strong signals on the strength of the channel itself. Since the launch, we have seen really strong performance as expected from all our customers, which is reflected in repurchase rate, AOV. So really strong signal and happy that we took that.
So how does this tie into the membership program as well? Like, are they one and the same? Was their membership program launched before? And really a way to augment the membership program was the mobile app? And then do you want to maybe touch on the stack? Like, were you using something that was a bit more out of the box, like a tap card, or did you guys make it natively yourself? I'm curious how you actually approached it. I think I get the business part of it, like business case. But yeah, I'm curious to maybe dive in more on the technical side.
Sure. So the part of the business casing was actually the assessment of how do we want to do this. And we had strong conviction that this is a channel we want to invest in. So we wanted to lay down the technical foundation in the right way. We never looked at external solution, and we knew at that point that we wanted to go with a custom option. Then the choice came down to building a native app versus the React Native. And on React Native, the answer was very clear to us to be able to cross-train our existing team so that we are able to share the same resources as needed and flex up and down. That's kind of like what was the driving factor over there in those early days on the technical side. With respect to the membership program and the loyalty program, to your point, we looked at it as just another value prop for our existing customers. We looked at it as a way to elevate our existing customer experience. Some of the most desired and most used features on the app is a For You tab. We are able to personalize the product recommendation based on the shopping behavior, based on the preferences that we have provided to you. And that's kind of why we are seeing like strong engagement with the app as well. I can't get into the details of the specific roadmap, but some of the obvious things that I see in the near future are, example would be augmented reality and virtual try-on. Those are the obvious innovation that we want to go behind and make it easier for our users to actually try the products, no matter where they are. So I do see this as a value add to our existing customers as a part of our membership perk. And then on the technical side, like as I mentioned, we wanted to own our own destiny here.
I love it. And you said you basically went React on the app as well, right? React Native?
Yeah.
It makes sense. You guys, obviously your front end is React now, so you want to have shared resources. Makes a ton of sense. Question for you. When you look at being able to find a good balance, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of your resources are in-house, meaning you have your own line managers and your own engineers that work in-house. Maybe talk to us a bit about that decision over kind of going from SI to SI and maybe leaning in on SIs. Yeah, curious about what the thought behind that was and what the business case was.
Let's see how to rephrase this, because I won't say the decision was mine to start with, but the decision to maintain it this way is definitely mine. So when Mejuri started, there were no great solution back in those days, and they started with a custom stack. And it really helped the business scale really fast in the early days because they were able to quickly run with new ideas, new features, and grow the business over time. And what I talked about as the opportunity cost of the stack I inherited was due to the lack of proactive maintenance. And then, of course, the idea behind headcount, those were the factors as well. But what was really beautiful about that setup was having that tech culture in the company. So I think about this as a combination of art and science to elevate everything together. So having that in-house tech culture was priceless for me. And I don't think you can get that when you're working with the system integrator. There's no way you're going to have that culture. So when we made this decision to migrate to Shopify, I wanted to make sure that we preserve that. Like we strike a balance of build and buy and not go from 100% build to 100% buy. So I never think the answers are in the extreme. It's somewhere in the middle. And we were uniquely positioned because I was not starting from scratch. I was not starting from zero when it comes to building that tech culture, building an engineering team. I already had it. And the question was like, how do we optimize our team and maintain that going forward, which makes sense for us as the business. And the culture played a big role. That's what I see as one of the biggest difference when I think about having an in-house tech team versus working completely with system integrated. And I also did some analysis talking with other brands purely on the data side. And when I look at, let's say, payroll or cost as a percentage of revenue, it is very clear that it's much better to have the kind of team structure we have here versus working externally. There's a lot more cost to the business that sometimes we don't see.
It makes sense. And I think if I could describe, and tell me if I'm speaking incorrectly here, but sounds like your approach, which makes sense, is you don't want anybody on your team to reinvent the wheel. And a good example of that is a PayPal integration. PayPal integrations are standard. They need to allow people to use PayPal on the website. And your team building a clever custom solution is effectively a rebuilding the wheel situation. But on the other side, you want your team to be able to control the design, look, feel, and a lot of the experience of the car. So let's not spend our engineering resources rebuilding the carburetor or the wheels. Let's use that out of the box and invest our resources in design and things that can kind of make the car go faster, if that makes sense in that analogy. I'm curious, is that more or less how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, precisely what makes us unique. Even with Shopify, we know there are certain capabilities that we have, which makes us very distinct. Just to give you an example, if you go to our website, you can order a product that is not currently in stock, but there's an urban PO against it. So you can order a back-ordered product, for example. This is a custom solution for us. And these are the areas where I would just call them distinctly Mejuri, where we can actually level up. So to your point, let's not spend time doing things that have already been done before that Shopify, for example, is great at. Let's focus on things which will actually make us level it up even further. And it's easier to do so when you have that culture, when you have that team that knows how to get stuff done. And the part about culture, which pretty sure you'll appreciate as well, Karen, here, is the whole concept around agile versus waterfall. No matter how much you try, if you're working with an external agency, you have to work in a waterfall format. You have to have a clearly laid out SOW. It just makes things slow. It just makes things a lot more expensive, which goes back to what I originally said. Like, hey, there's a huge opportunity cost of not moving fast enough. So when you take all that into consideration, you are better off with an internal team structure than working 100% with an external company.
I love it. Rohit, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you spending the time chatting with us, spreading kind of your view of the world on this. And I think this is amazing. I know a lot of businesses are kind of stuck in the middle, and I love your approach of not being in the extremes. I've seen both. I've seen businesses that over rely and romanticize technology. And it's the analogy of you build a Ferrari to drive across the street instead of just walking there. And then the other side of it is when you don't have a technology strategy, then you're effectively going to be like your competition. It all looks the same. It feels the same. You're using the same infrastructure. So what are you really competing on online? And how can you get that extra 0.2, 0.3% conversion on the website? So I think that's what everyone's chasing. So wanted to thank you so much for your time, Rohit. This was a really, really, really awesome podcast.
Absolutely. It was great chatting with you, Katie, as well.
The Ecommerce Toolbox Expert Perspectives is brought to you by Noibu. To find out more about Noibu and how we can help you debug your e-commerce site and rocket your revenue, visit www.noibu.com. That's Noibu.com. And then make sure to search for the Ecommerce Toolbox Expert Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Noibu, thanks for listening.